show these mainlanders that Sakra is our island!
No Rest for the Wicked can be a bit unforgiving when you start out, but there are some tips that will help you get into the groove. Here are some beginner to mid-game tips to get you started on your journey. First, pay attention to your weight. Your item weight is probably one of the most important aspects you'll need to pay attention to in No Rest for the Wicked. If you're feeling slow, sluggish, and having trouble with combat, there's a chance you've equipped yourself into the heavy category. Your weight is only affected by what you have equipped on your character, so be sure you don't put on too much before upgrading your stats so that you can handle the burden. Also, pay attention to the stats of your gear because some can positively or negatively affect your carry weight. I found that the best balance is to keep it in the normal zone so you can zip around to your heart's content. Believe it or not, you can miss the mushroom soup recipe, and it's very, very helpful for a large majority of the game. At the very beginning of No Rest for the Wicked, you'll encounter a chef making some soup. He asks you to collect the herb and mushrooms that are near him. The herbs are just to his left on the table, and the mushrooms are on the right up on the shelf. Collect them both and create the mushroom soup recipe. The reason this hard to miss item is so important is because it's the very best early game recipe in the game. But there is a chance you can actually miss it if you continue on and rest for the night. Don't do that. This heals almost your entire life bar and the ingredients are easily collected, so be sure to stop and pick it up. Turn on enemy poise in the settings. One option that is presented to you early on is to turn on the enemy poise meter. Be sure you do this in the menu. This will give you a good idea of how well you're doing with your parries and attacks. This also has the added benefit of giving you a heads up when you'll have a big window to do damage should you have just perfectly parried an opponent or completely filled up their poise meter. Practice backstabs. Enemies can be tough to beat, but they often have a huge long attack animation that leave their backs exposed, and by stabbing them in the back, you can deal a huge amount of damage and make yourself immune to damage while the animation is playing out. Sure, they teach you to sneak attack enemies early on, but pulling this off in the middle of a fight can turn the tide of battle in your favor. A well-timed sidestep and backstab is almost always better than a perfect parry. Chop down every tree, mine every ore, and dig every hole you see. These resources are invaluable not only in upgrading your equipment, but in improving the city of Sacrament so you can gain access to better recipes, resources, and crafting options. You will likely find a few tools early on just by playing, so be sure you equip things like the shovel or pickaxe. And if you don't find them, you can buy the shovel, for example, from Fillmore in Sacrament for 20 coins if you've been looking for one. After you get past the first boss, you're going to be asked about upgrades. We recommend that you upgrade your resource inventory first. About 10 hours in, if you pick everything up, you're going to be doing a lot of management of the things that you've collected because you need those things for recipes, upgrades, etc. This is an important decision to make, and there's a bit of discourse about which path to go first, as you could choose a second weapon slot or rings for more perks. However, we definitely recommend resource inventory as a great slot to start with because you're going to need a lot of random knickknacks to craft, repair, and cook things early on. Once you start building out your character and getting better gear, you can start looking at weapons and ring slots to build out great gear combinations, but more often than not, you'll want those resources first. So start with resource inventory as you progress so you can kind of branch out to other avenues that fit your playstyle later. Pick up bounties and challenges from Captain Randolph as soon as possible. When you're just starting out, one of the easier ways to level up is by taking bounties from Captain Randolph. You'll get some fast, early levels and get gear and weapons as a reward. Generally speaking, it's great to stack as many ways as possible to level up early on. You'll find Captain Randolph shortly after you've defeated the first boss you encounter in the game at Sacrament, and you'll want to pick a bounty and grab as many challenges as you can hold. These will grant a boost of XP once completed and can be done at your own pace. Repair things around town for free stuff. Repairing things often yields rewards, and one of the first repairs we recommend making is to the lodging stairway. At the bottom, you'll find 2 chests with a ton of goodies. For the price of 2 pine logs and some dug up copper, you can not only get some great goodies, but also have easier access to your first home/storage area. Speaking of home, buy a house as soon as possible. After completing an early quest called Of Rats and Raiders around level 8, you'll gain the ability to buy a home in Sacrament. This is important because it'll open up the ever important ability to place chests on your property for the purpose of storing the numerous pieces of loot you'll otherwise have to sell or drop on the ground. You do have the free area, of course, to store loot early on, but be sure to get yourself a house so you can store as much as you want. Vrats and Raiders can be a bit tough to beat at early levels, so we recommend grinding a bit before taking it on. And you will need to decide a playstyle early on. One thing to note is that there's no option to respec just yet in No Rest for the Wicked, so you'll need to decide what kind of playstyle you're going to take on very early. Once you start leveling up dexterity and strength, there's no going back, and there are some playstyles that will require intelligence or focus for devastating rune attacks. Consider what kind of character you want to build, and be sure to put some points into that attribute early on. Eventually you'll start finding weapons you can't use without leveling other attributes up, which isn't practical if you want to make efficient use of your leveling. And those are just some of the tips we have to start out in No Rest for the Wicked, but there's a lot more this game throws at you. So with that said, did we miss anything important? Let us know in the comments below, and for more on all things gaming, keep it right here on IGN.